Hi, folks. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on the content for this upcoming episode. We are talking with a person who is in an industry that supports victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault. While we don't talk about any specific instances, there's no graphic information. We just wanted to make sure that you know that that's what's coming in this episode, so that if you'd rather not be a part of listening to it, you don't have to. Hello, everyone. I'm Cami Chaos.
And I am Rick Turoczy, and we are mildly interesting people, which is why we always go out of our way each week to find somebody far more interesting than us that we get the chance to chat with. Cami, who is our guest this week?
May I say something first? I think that handoff went flawlessly.
Thanks. I usually screw the handoff up because you say, and this, and I don't know where to go after this. So congratulations to the team for getting it over the finish line. Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes. See, he's already fitting in on this show. All right, everyone. I say some wild stuff when I introduce people like, oh, they're so close to me. I love them so much. And it's always true. And it just seems to get more and more ridiculous as it goes along. But I have not yet been able to include this in an introduction. Hey, let me introduce you all to a person that I've known since I was like 12 or 13 years old, who I used to play D&D with and pull all-nighters and like do crazy childhood things. He is also all grown up. It's not just me that got all grown up. He's also all grown up. And now he is a technology safety specialist for a national domestic violence organization. I would like to introduce all of you to my friend, Chad Sniffen.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Well,
and to see you after all of these years. That's the great pleasure of this, actually.
It has been like
and to
14
meet Rick,
years.
Too. He seems nice, but
it's all right. Yeah,
it's all
totally.
right.
Yeah,
he's
whatever.
okay. Yeah. We'll keep him around.
I like his beard.
He's a good beard, right?
He does. Yeah. He does have a good beard. It's hard to have a long beard sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the most
it's the pandemic thing happening here. Yeah.
Yes.
It is the most high maintenance part of him by far. So I don't know where to start. So I would like to offer Rick the opportunity to ask the first question because I am overwhelmed with curiosity.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. As folks who watch the show, I do a lot of research. Cami likes to fly by the seat of her pants. I'm more like, I need to know who we're talking to. Otherwise I can't make intelligent connections. And one thing that kind of dawned on me as I was doing the research, Chad, is we've had this spate of guests recently who are very much like, oh, I was born a futurist, or I know that I've been a writer since I was a very small child. In looking through your history, there's definitely a thread that runs through your work. And I would just love to have you share with us what inspired you to get on that path. When did you know that was the path you needed to be on? Like, just describe your journey for us.
That's interesting. So what I do and what I've been doing for over 20 years now is working in what there's a lot of ways to phrase it, but the gender-based violence field. And so I've worked right now. I work at a national nonprofit focused on domestic violence. Although I've mostly worked on national nonprofits focused on sexual assault. And the reason those are split in this country is because there's two different funding streams for those kind of areas of concern from the federal government. One's for domestic violence and funds things like shelters and services, and others for sexual assault and funds things like rape crisis centers, and also education programs, which ironically there is no funding for on the DV side at the federal level. But because it's all political stuff. But I did not intend to get started in this field at all. Actually, I wanted to be a biochemist since I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. Before I knew what biochemistry was, I just thought it sounded cool because I like biology and I like chemistry. And I thought, oh, I'll just do both of those at the same time. And I was always a reasonably smart kid, but fairly undermotivated. Actually, dramatically undermotivated, which Cami may remember, actually.
I would pause you and say you weren't reasonably smart. You were outrageously intelligent, but yes, undermotivated.
Well, undermotivated.
Yeah.
And I, in reflection, I was bored all the time, and I had attention deficit disorder, which did not get, which is basically somewhere between like a physiological trait and a personality, but I mean, but that did not get identified as a trait of mine until my 40s, early 40s. And then when I started getting treatment for it, my whole life really shifted, actually. So that's actually really interesting for me, because I was able to do a lot more in a day than I had before, right? Because I was able to stay focused. But anyway, so I was really interested in biochemistry. I went to community college for a really long time because I was not a very good student, because I was kind of a smart guy, but not really focused. And so I went to community college. I would start every year with like chemistry and physics and, sciences to get me prepared for some sort of transfer track, and I would drop them all and just stick with my music classes. And so I did that for like 5 years, and eventually I'm like, okay, I can't. This can only go on for so long. And so I transferred to a 4-year university, to UC Davis, from my community college, and I got in this thing called McNair Scholars, which is like this science student transfer track, and I was really bad at math because math requires a lot of discipline, to learn, the things you need to learn. And that is really important in biochemistry. And so, because it's a lot of math in biochemistry. It's a lot of enzyme kinetics and rate equations and things like that. And so I was not a particularly good biochemistry student, but I was actually really good in a lab. And so, because I'm really good at processes, right? So anyway, so that the point of that setup is to say that I did not think I was going to do what I wound up doing. And I did not plan to at all. But I was dating someone when I started at UC Davis who had been sexually assaulted. And they disclosed that to me. And no one had ever told me anything like that before. And I was in my early 20s. And I did not have a very useful response to that disclosure. I like to think of myself as a nice person and helpful and supportive, and especially at the time, much of my identity was really constructed around how happy can I make other people, and so I did not do a very good job at that in that moment, and I did not like that. I wasn't necessarily blamed for that or anything like that, but and I didn't blame her, so that was important, right? But I didn't say anything helpful. And so there was a group on campus that did these educational skits where they talked about, they went through a vignette about sexual assault, where there's an offender who's male and victims who are female. And so they did that skit, and then after the skit, they give it like a presentation, which is where really an awareness raising presentation about sexual assault. And so I went to that because I really want to get better at this and be more helpful, right? And so I watched the presentation, and the whole educational part after the skit. And I went up to the coordinator, and I was like, I'd really like to learn more. He's like, oh, you're a guy talking to me. I need a guy to play this offender, in my skit, because we get this request a lot, and we don't have a lot of guys interested in doing this. And so you're talking to me, so I'm going to ask you to do this. And given that a lot of my identity was constructed around being helpful to people, I was like, okay. and then that big case basically became the rest of my life, actually, in that I became very engaged in doing that skit. I was like the rape guy on campus because I played that skit. I would play the offender a lot. And along with that, the person I was dating, she also introduced me. She went to a different university, but she introduced me to some kind of feminist activist stuff that was happening on campus. And I had never done anything like that before, but I really liked her, and she said I should go to this thing, and I went to this thing. And very much in the same way, like I kind of had a discussion with the coordinator for this feminist activist group where I kind of disagreed with some of their talking points, even though I didn't know anything, and I just was trying to be helpful. And she's like, well, you should really come to a meeting and say that, thinking that I would never go to a meeting. So of course I went to the meeting and became like the co-coordinator of like the campus feminist activist group over like the next 5 years of my undergraduate. I stretched 2 years of undergraduate into 5 years again, because I stretched 2 years of community college into 5 years. So this is all to say that I really got on this path by trying to be helpful, because I really needed to be helpful to other people. And I still want to be helpful to other people. I think the difference now is I don't really perceive it as the need that I did when I was younger, right? And so and also at the time especially, it was pretty rare for men to become involved in the movement as a job. Pretty rare for men to become involved in kind of feminist activism, which especially at the time and even now, for good reasons, I think, is considered like a feminist activity, like, work against sexual assault, work against domestic violence. That creates some political tension, because you do not have to be a feminist or a liberal or a progressive or in any way to be sexually assaulted or experience a violent relationship, right? And so it actually creates a little bit of political difficulty, for our field. But it was pretty rare for men to want a job, and it was pretty rare also, not rare, but for men to really have the right political orientation that is like comfortable for everybody else, especially people who are women working in the field, right? And I had both, so that was a really big win for me because I experienced a lot of male privilege actually in working in a feminist activity, because I was male, and because everyone's like, oh, there's a guy, and he's not like creeping us out, so it actually became a really good fit for me, much better than, as it turns out, biochemistry was, because I was really bad at math because I couldn't pay attention in school, and so
not as much math in feminism.
Hardly any at all, actually.
I can introduce you to an amazing female feminist mathematician.
Oh, that'd be, yeah.
I'm not even, one of our previous guests is an amazing feminist and a mathematician. So, I mean.
That's, and that's, the thing is, you can be a feminist carpenter, you can be a feminist plumber, there's no, feminist is just like your view of the world, right? But, but do you take it, apply it in your work in some meaningful way, right? And so, right. So, just like you can be like a conservative plumber, conservative, whatever, electrician.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, why would you want to? But you could, yeah.
Right. I mean, you maybe be a little bit more angry at the wiring or something. Although, then again, that is my perception of what it's like to be a conservative. But so, so there's a lot of bias in that statement. But anyway, so
you don't have to be unbiased on this show. Luckily, we can be as biased as we would like to. Okay.
I just like to call my own bias. That's all.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, right. And so that's how I got really, it was from the story of a person I cared about that I got involved in the work I do. But also, again, calling my own bias and trying to be like, perceive myself in something that feels like an accurate way. I really needed to be helpful, and there was a lot of space especially for a male-bodied person to be helpful, in that movement, right? And I also should say that when I was a volunteer, so I started off at the campus program as a volunteer for several years, and I got kicked out of school for not paying attention in class. And then I got a job at UC Davis, and then I went back, and then I finished my undergraduate as a part-time student, part-time staff, which is actually the way to go. It actually made things a lot cheaper for me.
I got it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, because they pay most of your tuition, and you have a job at the same time. And so, but when I went back, I still didn't think of it as like a career path, like something I could keep doing. But the program I was working for brought a guy onto campus to talk about masculinity and violence, a guy named Jackson Katz. And I volunteered to drive him back to the airport in San Francisco from UC Davis, which is a little over, well, especially if you have to go through San Francisco, like about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. And so we just talked, and like then I totally saw like that, oh, hey, I had a role model. So that was another important reason why I stayed, why this became the field that I stayed in, is because at a critical point where I could have like just, said, okay, that was fun for college and I'm going to go do something else.
Yep.
I said, oh, okay, no, this is something I can do after college, right? And I can keep doing it. And this guy I didn't become a speaker like Jackson Katz does, but I did continue doing work in this field because I kind of had a role model who kind of had some sort of example to give me, and we had a lot of time to talk, right?
Yeah.
And so that was another important reason why, like, I kind of stuck with what I'm doing and haven't gone off to be a biologist or a biochemist or any other kind of ist. Yeah. So that is a long-winded answer, but
no, love it. Thank you.
It was, and it kind of makes me, so we have a lot of discussion of men who are feminists in my home. When I was young, I wouldn't even identify as a feminist because like there was crazy feminist movement stuff and I didn't understand what was going on. And there were women who were telling me that I couldn't wear lipstick and skirts because I was like bowing down to male society's opinion of what I should be. And I was like, fuck off. I like this lipstick. I like this skirt. Leave me alone. And so it took me, even as a woman, it took me a long time to be like, hell yeah, I'm a feminist. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It is, and I am not like, I'm not a poor precious man feelings, but I'm not a poor precious man feelings person. In case no one had that knowledge, I'm not. But I see the difficulty, especially in older generations of men, to be able to say, I'm a feminist. And so I'm asking you, but also Rick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We follow a podcaster called Kunkin Dassner. His name is Duncan, and like he's just unabashedly a feminist.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. And I've spent some time thinking, like, what is it like? What is it like to be a man and realize, oh shit, I'm a feminist?
I feel like I want Rick to answer this because I really, but I guess I'm the interviewee.
Well,
but go ahead, Rick. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start, and then Chad can follow. I think for me, it never was like, and still really isn't. It's like never a badge or part of my persona. It was just a way of thinking. So I don't know that I've ever necessarily labeled myself a feminist. I think I ascribe to a lot of the same values as feminism does and those kind of things. But, my life has been filled with amazing women, from being raised by a single mother to like working in marketing. Like most of my peers and superiors were women. And, the work I do now, I get to highlight a lot of amazing women founders who are building businesses and that kind of thing. So I think for me, it's just been more of there was never really a question in my mind, but there also was, I realized some folks that has to be like almost like a decision point where it's like, I am now going to make the decision to be this type of person. And mine was very fluid to get along that journey. There wasn't a specific point in time that I can point to and say, oh, this is when I knew, or that kind of thing. So, for me, I think it's always been part and parcel of my behavior and personality. It just now is more widely accepted for men to be described as feminists.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And for me, my introduction to feminism was a very politicized introduction to feminism, like, because I was part of an activist group. And for men of kind of my generation, at least, if that was kind of your introduction into like the political academic forms of feminism, like you were not supposed to actually call yourself a feminist, because at the time, the popular philosophy of the time was that, at least the academic philosophy of the time, was that you don't have the experience that women have, and feminism is rooted in women's experiences, and so you shouldn't. So men were encouraged at that time to call themselves pro-feminists. And so old, like guys around my age or older, like will often call themselves pro-feminists, not feminists, if they're going to call themselves anything at all. for me, I actually don't usually use the word feminist when I describe because I know many men and women, people of all genders, who might describe themselves that way, but don't really do things that I would call feminist, do feminist things. So I like to say I do feminist things, and as to the extent that I think that they are aligned with my philosophy, which is heavily informed by like feminism and feminist writers and feminists I've talked to and stuff like that. And so, and I don't always get that right, and I, if it was like you can choose, do you call yourself a feminist or not? I would definitely say, well, I'm a feminist, but I really prefer to say I do feminist things, and then people can decide if that's, because like any other label, like it can go too far, right? You can use it like anything else. Having a ideology being a proxy for your behavior, is I think kind of can be a real problem sometimes, right?
Yep.
And so,
yep.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think
too,
I think the always top of mind is like the virtue signaling or saviorship kind of stuff too. That's always a concern.
Yeah.
That was where I was at. I was just like, so as a person, as a white middle-aged woman who does DEI work, I'm very aware of the fact that you can't be ally. You can't just be a noun ally. You have to allyship, the verb. You have to do the work, and it's the same there. And I appreciate both of your answers, and I accept them. And then I go check. I will continue communicating with both of you.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Which is,
that will make things in the house a lot easier.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sure it's a relief for Chad, but for Rick, it could get pretty awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little tense.
Yeah. A little tense. Cami didn't accept my answer about feminism. I think I meant.
Guess I'll stay in the basement today. That's how it is.
So, is it okay if we change? I didn't expect an opening to talk about neurodiversity and ADHD, but it's actually the perfect segue into. I mentioned something earlier that something Chad had done in his youth had really impacted my life and the way that I live right now. And that is, Chad, you were the only person I knew as a kid who had the exact same shirt and pants and socks, and I assume underwear and t-shirts. I had never discussed with you the underwear situation.
Indeed.
Because that just didn't seem appropriate. But you had all
but it is now, apparently.
That segues into a memory I have about you, actually. Yeah.
That's fine. We can discuss that. So I don't know how conscious the decision was, or if it was just something that made sense to you at the time, but all of your clothing was exactly the same. You had slightly different variation in colors of your button-down shirts. Everything else was the same. And I know now, as an adult, is this still the case in your wardrobe?
Well, I work from home, so now it's mostly t-shirts. But no, that was the case, especially at that time, actually. Like that late high school, community college. I had heard that I can't remember if it was Einstein or some other brilliant physicist had basically a monochrome wardrobe because he didn't want to spend the brain space to think about what he's going to put on. Yes. And I knew that I was smart, but at least people had always told me that I was smart, but I couldn't understand why I didn't do smart things. And so I tried to do smart things whenever I heard about them because I didn't have a great pattern of behavior at the time. And so, also, I was very self-conscious. I just in general, I did not feel comfortable experimenting with clothes or and so safe choices were always felt great to me, right? And so also I didn't really trust my sense of fashion. I still don't trust my sense of fashion, but
well, let me tell you, you look fantastic right now. So
yes.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. but no, mostly it was because I thought, okay, that sounds I mean, and it does, to be honest, it does, make your choices in the morning a lot easier, right? I mean, I think there's a little bit of, speaking of neurodivergence, a little bit of unacknowledged like Asperger's-ness, or so, a little bit of being on the spectrum to like kind of really not caring about social cues in that way, right? And so like, so I think that like it's not just that's something that smart people do; it's something that people who don't really understand the value of social signals do. Also, I think, or really don't value social signals, even if they do understand the value, right? But that was really where it's coming from, and it was mostly because, although, I mean, it was because I was trying to do smart things, and it was a lot easier to shop because shopping was incredibly anxiety provoking for me at the time.
It's not anxiety provoking anymore. Shopping is very anxiety provoking.
I think that's what benefit of being older, right? Now I just care less. Like, I mean, haven't you, felt that? Like, you just care less about things as we're talking.
Yeah. So what I was reflecting on is that I have very much gotten to the point where there are like 2 or 3 fabrics that I like wearing. I don't like anything else touching my skin. I've never been able to handle tags touching me. I've been a tag ripper outer my entire life. Now I almost exclusively buy clothing that doesn't have tags in it. And at some point when I started traveling a lot, I was like, why? I just want the same underwear for every day. And so I was like, I'm just fine. I'm going to find an underwear I like, and every underwear will be the same. And then every sock became the same. And then now I'm at the point where I'm like, I have 5 tank tops that are all identical, so I just wear them whenever I want to, and they're all the same color. I mean, like almost my wardrobe is. I'm wearing a little bit of red today. I'm very bright. My wardrobe is.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah. This is my Zoom shirt because we also work from home. Yes. But my wardrobe is like basically just multiples of the same few pieces, and I can't help but credit both you and a person I saw talk about decision fatigue.
And how that's probably actually, getting away from the idea of whether it's a social signaling thing. Yeah, decision fatigue is a real thing, right? And I think I experienced that a lot as a younger person, and even more now, actually.
Yes.
And that's not something I didn't even bother. I learned about from TikTok, really.
No, please continue.
No, TikTok pegged me as someone interested in ADD, and so I got a ton of it, and they were all very helpful to me, actually, right?
Nice.
Yeah, I get the same. All of my Instagram stories are like, "Hello, do you suffer from ADHD? Let me tell you about your life."
Right.
And every once in a while, I mean, usually it's just like, yes, so relatable. And every once in a while, you're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Let me make a note.
Yeah.
My entire world is about to change, and it genuinely does. Also helps with my food hyperfixations because they give you all those like recipes.
Good recipes. I have them all saved. I have yet to make one, but I have them all saved.
I have 2 levels. I really want this to be made, and in that case, I send it to Rick, hoping that he will make it for me. Right. Or I just save it. I'm like, maybe I'll get around to this at some point. I very rarely. The only thing I've gotten around to is a beautiful green goddess dressing that Joshua Weissman made that I'm obsessed with. But I haven't made it in like 3 weeks, so it's time to make some more. I don't even remember where I was going with that. I got caught in a
That's so weird. We were talking about ADHD and you ran off the rails. So odd.
It's just one of those things.
It is just one of those things. So thank you for giving me this knowledge from a very young point, that someone that I thought was super smart and super together and like a great, kind, wonderful person. Because he has spent his entire life trying to make other people feel happy and validated. That's the truest statement I've ever heard about anyone in my life. So thank you for giving me this background from my youth to be able to be like, Chad didn't care. I'm just going to wear bamboo tank tops and linen pants. And that's my entire wardrobe. And
I have 20 of the same brand and cut of t-shirts. I do different colors because it helps me to know which ones are clean or not.
Sure.
I'll have like 3 or 4 of the same color, and they're really cheap, so I'll just pick up a new one every now and then whenever I go to like Costco. because then I'm at home. I've been working from home for 8 years, and so it's just my
wow.
done.
Yeah. Oh, so you also were working from home pre-pandemic. So you,
yes. Yeah. And it was a big.
It didn't really change much for me.
Yeah, no, for me too. Yeah.
Talk to me about when you first. You seem to be the kind of person who would do well working from home.
I am. Yes and no. So I'm a little introverted, but not like, introverted in the the obviously diagnosable way, right? Right. And so being around people doesn't cause me immense anxiety, so, right? I am, I'm really not big into star signs, but I am very much a Cancer. And so I don't believe in star signs, but Cancer describes me really well. And I am a Cancer. I like being at home. I'm kind of a homebody. The problem for me is that though I'm not good being isolated, and so the pandemic was especially hard. And when I started working from home, I was married to my ex-wife, and we were living in the forest, basically in Wisconsin. She had gotten a job in a rural area in Wisconsin, and we moved there. And that's when I started working from home because I quit my job in California. And then someone I knew through work said, "Hey, we have this remote job. I see you just moved. You want it?" And so it's like, so yeah. And but I was basically in this cabin in the woods all day, and that was not really. It was very picturesque and very isolating. That can drive you a little crazy over time. And then my ex-wife, she was working at a clinic all day, and then she'd come on. She was done with people, and then I'd be like, "Hey, person!" It was bad. Yeah, it was not.
You turn into like a bounding golden retriever when someone gets up. You're like, "Hello."
Yes, right. And she had the kind of job where you still have to keep working once you get home, and so that was even So yeah, but
so you didn't have the smoothest entry, but it works for you now.
I've kind of gotten used to it because so many people do it now, right? So last week, we just had our first post-pandemic. This wasn't my first conference, but it was the first one where I wasn't presenting at. And so it was a big meeting of people who have this specific type of grant from the federal government. And for a lot of us, we hadn't seen that many people anywhere for like a long time. And so that was the first time I met the people I actually work with in person. Since I got this job, I actually knew some of those people before I got the job. But the first time we had met in person as a team in over a year and a half, actually. And so prior to that, during the pandemic, I got a corporate job for like 8 months, and I started and stopped that job from my bedroom. They shipped me the laptop. I opened it up, started working. Then when I quit, I shipped it back, and then that was it. So I don't like it, but I've adapted to it. But but I'm the kind of person where I like to be at home and I like to be comfortable and wear my t-shirts and sweats and whatever. But I do kind of like to go out. I do have a desire to go out and see people and do things. I don't have I don't need to do it for very long to feel satisfied. And if I do it for too long, then it's too much. But,
I like to plan those things. Yeah. I really like planning them. And then I get to them and I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Why did I agree to do this? Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Every time I accept a presentation, it's like it's like that. It's like it's 3 months from now. Oh, sure, fine. Then like a week from, why did I do that?
Every time.
Yes. Every time I say I won't do this again.
Yes.
Yeah. My phrase for that is why does past Rick hate future Rick so much?
Totally.
Why did he do that to him?
Past Chad is a jerk, and he does not like future Chad for sure.
I try to combat that. I try to combat that by doing nice things for future Cami, so that when I have to speak at a conference and I am insanely nervous, or I love you, my friends, but if I have to go to dinner at a friend's house, I'm like, okay, past Cami probably did this for a reason. You do love the person.
Number one. Right.
So past Cami sometimes does nice things. She made the bed for me. She made tea. You know,
She's
I
trying to
didn't
make
make
up.
my own tea today. Past Cami didn't make tea today. Past Cami rolled out of bed shortly before this recording session, and Rick did it literally everything to make me a functional human today, except brush my hair and brush my teeth and dress me. So, um,
Rick is a great partner for present Cami, I gotta say.
yes, he is. He's a great partner for President Cami. Oh, past Cami didn't do anything. Okay, current Rick will take care of everything. Wow, we really went off on a.
Yeah.
It happens.
I want to do two things, maybe three. So let
Okay.
me discuss them with the two of you, and then we can make an educated decision. I would like to give Chad an opportunity to talk about where people can go if they feel
Yep.
the need to reach out for help because of domestic violence or sexual assault. I think it's uncomfortable and awkward and weird, and no one likes to talk about it, and it's incredibly needed.
Yep.
And so I would like to pick his brain and get those resources.
Sure.
I would like to give Rick the opportunity to ask any additional questions he might have for Chad. And I would like to do the lightning round. These are the three things that I have in my
Okay.
heart right now.
Mhm.
Let's choose our adventure.
Shall I go? and
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So-
then, yeah, please do.
So one of the great things about the advocacy work of feminist activists for decades is that in the 90s, it resulted in something called the Violence Against Women Act, which was actually initially sponsored. It's not a political plug, but it was initially sponsored by Joe Biden and Arlen Specter, so a Democrat and
Okay.
Republican.
Yep.
And unfortunately, since then, it's become much more politicized bill. It used to not be. What the Violence Against Women Act provided for was, one, my entire career. Every job I have worked at has been funded in one way or another by the Violence Against Women Act through one of its programs. Every job in this field, not when I worked for Bumble, but every job,
Okay.
in the nonprofit sector that I've worked in. And another benefit of that is that there is a stream of resources going to every state that provides for services at the local level for domestic violence and sexual assault. And so if you live in a rural place in the United States, it may not be as close as you'd like it to be, but within in most places, like within a few minutes, like a reasonable in-city drive, or at the most like a few hours, if you live in a rural place, there is either a rape crisis center, which specifically focuses on people who have experienced sexual assault, or a domestic violence organization, which, some sort of intimate partner violence, or both. And sometimes the one nonprofit will do both things, right? And so that's a great thing, and that's not something that happens really anywhere else in the world. Most, even kind of fairly advanced European countries don't have the kind of dedicated funding that we have in the United States. And the reason why we have that funding is because of 20 years of activism. Feminist activists, the most feminist activists you can think of, creating those funding, creating the will, the political will to create that funding, and then distribute that funding. And so if you're someone who's experienced sexual assault or domestic violence, the easiest way for you is to call the National for Sexual Assault. There's a National Sexual Assault Hotline. It's run by RAINN, which a lot you may have heard of. That's an acronym, RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. They have a 1-800 number, which I don't remember, but you can put in the notes for this blog.
Yeah.
Yep, we will.
Yes, they also do online chat. They have a website. If you,
I was going to ask. I know a lot of people they've just been through a huge crisis. The last thing they want to do is talk to someone on the phone,
right?
Because that could be its own. So there is also a website that they can go to, and we'll link that.
Yeah. And RAINN was actually one of the first nonprofits to get into that non-online chat space. Now, RAINN is a referral service primarily. So RAINN will, ask you where you live, and then it will connect you to a rape crisis center in your area. And they might do some, provide you with some initial help on the phone or on chat, in during that pathway. There's a National Domestic Violence Hotline, and they do pretty much the same thing. They do online chat. I just because I spent most of my time working on the sexual assault side of things. I don't know everything yet as well as I used to, or on the DV side as well as the sexual assault side. But it's basically parallel. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is basically parallel to RAINN. And they will help you to find a shelter if you're looking for shelter, or someone to talk to if you're looking for someone to talk to. The nonprofit that I work for, the National Network to End Domestic Violence, we're kind of like the association for associations. So there's part of that funding that comes from the federal government, that came from the Violence Against Women Act, is for every state to have a state-based association for all the rape crisis centers and domestic violence agencies in that state. And that actually helps every state to kind of have like organized policies and organized services throughout that state. And NEDV, and also there's two actually national DV associations. And NEDV, the one I work for is one of them. We're basically like the federal policy representative of all the different states in DC. And the project I work on actually is focused on technology and abuse. So we help advocates at a local level understand like how technology is being used in intimate partner violence, so that they can have the tools and resources that they need to work with survivors who are being abused through like the computer or through their phone or through social media, through like stalkerware or through all sorts of other things. And also we do the reason why I mentioned NDAs earlier is because we do a lot of corporate consulting and to help corporations understand how their products and their policies could be better and less harmful, right? And often they don't want that to be a public conversation, and so there's a lot of NDAs going on, so that's kind of the policy work that I do at NNEDV, and also I did at my last job at the National Sexual Violence Resource Center.
That is something that I feel like I should have given a lot of thought to, and I haven't. And I feel really enlightened right now. And so, in addition to information for those who are seeking assistance, I assume that there are resources for those who'd like to get involved in preventing domestic violence and sexual assault. And we will share those resources with all of you as well, because it's incredibly important for everyone to have those resources.
And I can help you find those links if you want.
Thank you. I would love that. Thank you. I would love that. Rick, do you have any additional questions for the lovely Chad?
No, I think that's a great place to just kind of end the conversation and transition over into your mildly interesting questions for Chad.
Mildly. The lightning round. Are you ready, Chad?
I am ready to ride the lightning.
Let's do it. Okay. Question 1.
Yes.
What is your favorite but least useful hobby?
My favorite but least useful hobby is building mods for computer games. It is not very useful, but it's not even my favorite, to be honest, but I do spend a ridiculous amount of time on it because it really helps my ADD brain. Like, it gives me something to focus on. Like, I don't actually code, but I've learned a lot of coding and a lot of just computer stuff, which actually helps me at work. It is not useful, and it is a huge time suck, but it is very detailed, and you can really kind of, it's very stepwise, right? And so like it's the kind of task that my brain really likes, and so
processes.
Yes, I think the mod I've spent the most time on is making weights in a game more realistic. For like a game where you have an inventory and you carry stuff around, and they say, okay, this sponge weighs half a pound. Like, no, it doesn't. There's no sponge on earth weighs half a pound. And so so you look it up, and then you say, okay, I adjust the value. Anyway, so
that is oddly specific and amazing. That is maybe the best answer I have ever received to this question. I'm putting stars around the answer because I'm so
excellent. It is not a very I don't think I raised except for a very specific group of people, my cool factor did not go up. Except for a very specific
Okay,
group of
well,
people.
it did with
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
So really, isn't that the important thing?
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right, question number 2. Would you like to survive the zombie apocalypse?
I totally appreciate people who wouldn't. Yeah, because actually, The Last of Us has made me think about this a lot, right? I think it made everybody think about this a lot, right?
Yes.
Given the high level of suicide there is in The Last of Us. I felt that way after I played the game, actually, and so I was not looking forward to watching the TV show, even though it was great.
So
I
good.
I want to, because there will be people who need help, and I think that it will be worthwhile to stay alive to try to be helpful. But anyone who wants to off themselves, I totally get it. I
Yep.
might even join them at some point. If I get, break a leg and okay, I'm not coming back from this,
Yeah.
why not?
We become horses in that society. We really do. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, we're not going to survive this. Bye. Okay.
Right,
Excellent
right. I mean, because
question.
it's
Excellent
like
answer.
it's going to be a few hundred to a few thousand years before things recover, and it's like I'm not going to be around
Right.
for and so
Yeah.
You can be around to help as long as you can help. All right. Excellent. Excellent answer. A little bit more lighthearted. What is the last food you photographed?
The last food I photographed was I don't remember what it was. I'm sure it was something that my partner Sachi made, because my Sachi is an excellent chef cook, and she doesn't get paid for being a cook, so she's not a chef, but she's an excellent cook.
She and Rick have that in common.
Right, yes.
I would call him a chef, except it's inaccurate because so she makes
excellent food in general, and she often has a lot of attention. She's a very visual person. She's a visual artist, and so she often pays a lot of attention to presentation. So it's often very lovely to look at and then to eat.
Sachi's food is the last thing that Chad photographed. Yes. And maybe if we're lucky, he'll send us a picture and we can use it in the. I'm just saying.
Okay.
We've got post-production things. What is the best season?
Well, so I recently moved up here from Florida. So during the pandemic, most of the pandemic, I was in Florida with my mother because I got divorced in 2019, and then I was going to go stay with my mom for a few months, and then probably move closer to the DC area for work, right? But I kind of needed a little bit of a reset. I moved to my mom's house in December of 2019. So guess what? I stayed at my mom's house for the next 2 years, so I was in Florida. I lived in Florida for 3 years. The last year, I actually I had met Sachi in Florida, and I moved up to Gainesville, and so we lived together in Gainesville. And now we finally, I moved closer to the DC area, actually closer to two of my half sisters, who live in the DC area, in Baltimore. So I live in Baltimore now, and I. There are lots of things to say about Florida. Gainesville is a lovely city. I really like Gainesville. I do not like the hot. Because it's a muggy hot there, right? And the place is ruled by mosquitoes and Republicans, and so those are two things.
And alligators.
Alligators are actually pretty slow. If you've got eaten by an alligator, you really weren't paying attention. Because you were too close to the water, or you poked at the alligator, which people do, and because they're dumb.
That's not okay.
Yeah, no, it's not okay. And so, I mean, alligator did chase after my dog when my sister was walking my dog, but she was not paying attention. When we moved up here in March, and it was, still spring, but it's still like the end of fall, and it was just so lovely. Like, it was bright and sunny, but crisp and cool, and not too wet. No mosquitoes. It was fantastic. And so I think fall, our spring and fall, like the changes with that in between, right? Is really, I think, probably spring more than fall, because fall, like, it's lovely, but you have a lot of winter to look forward to. Spring is like, it's lovely and it's just getting lovelier. Like, right. So yeah.
So right now is your time.
Right now, yeah. Personality-wise, I'm kind of more of a winter, but I think because I don't like mosquitoes, I'm now more of a spring.
Yeah, I get that.
Yes, yeah.
All right. Final question.
Mhm.
Magnets or stickers?
Oh, it depends on what they're for. Like, so I have a board here of stickers from Gainesville. This is my sticker board from
Nice.
Gainesville of this places.
That salad, though.
Yeah, that's Satchel's best pizza place in Florida. Well, maybe at least in Gainesville. Certainly in Gainesville. There's actually really great pizza place in St. Augustine. But Satchel's and their offshoot Satch Squared. They if you're ever looking to eat in Gainesville, Florida, because you're there for some
Satchel's?
Tom Petty concert. Yeah, Satchel's is the place to go. It is also a so that's the first place that Sachi took me to when I moved to Gainesville, because it's like quintessentially hardcore Gainesville, and and kitsch and everything, and great pizza. And so
I'm writing it down in case I ever go to.
Right.
I don't.
You never know.
I don't see myself going to Florida again anytime soon, but you never know.
A lot of conferences in Orlando. That's before moving there.
I've been to them. Yeah, every conference.
Too. I know you've been.
I have. Yeah. But magnets or stickers? You didn't answer. You just said it.
Oh, so stickers for memories.
Okay.
Magnets for usefulness. Like as a decorative item, definitely I'm going with stickers. But I have a lot of magnets on the refrigerator because I just like to make use of space. And so, so yeah.
Also, as a person who wanted to be a biochemist, that's a sciencey realm, and magnets good for science.
Well, but also stickers. As a computer guy, I've historically been very somewhat hesitant about magnets.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. See?
It's not as big a problem now, but it's still a problem.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, we have done the whole thing. We've done the 5 mildly interesting questions. You passed. Check. You've got a heart around one of your answers and stars all over one of the answers. Whoa. And boxes around others. So I feel like you've done really well.
I am very proud of myself.
Thank you. I thought you would like that positive feedback. And so now I'm going to ask Rick to wrap up the show in a tiny little bundle.
All right. Thank you. So, Chad, it's been an absolute pleasure just getting the chance to meet you, to learn from you. The work you do is so very important and needed. And thank you for taking what I realize is a lot of emotional energy and kind of work energy to share that with us. So we really appreciate it. We will get all of that stuff linked up for folks. So if they need access to those resources, they are readily available. And it's always a pleasure to see Cami light up when she has special people on the show, and that definitely occurred today. So thank you from my perspective for making it a better day for me in the household by visiting with Cami today. Cami, anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
I want to acknowledge that I've gone through the entire episode without calling you Chatty once. So there you go. I mean, I did it at the end there,
but if you want to edit in,
chatty,
yeah, over the top every time. Right. Chatty,
chatty. No, don't hang up right away. We're just going to say goodbye to the people. You stay.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Well, I want to say it was such an incredible pleasure to meet both of you. Well, to meet you, Rick, and to see Cami again, who I've not seen in such a long time, and who I've known for such a long time. And this is, you could ask me questions all day. I'd be happy to do it, because that means I get to talk to Cami more and meet more Rick more. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah, of course.
We'll talk about the talking, the meeting. Let's say goodbye to the people. Everyone, Chad, say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.
Bye, everyone.